What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back to the Nerd Castle. Today in the world of indie games, we're going to be checking out a title called Godslayer Arena. I had a chance to do a couple of runs of this game, and it is a game that imagines what if Diablo just kind of played itself, and you were just in charge of the managerial decisions, like where to put skills and like where to put gems and stuff like that, and then the game faces you with different resistance-based challenges and things that you have to get through. It's an interesting idea. I definitely think there's room for improvement on this one, but we're going to take a look at it for about 30 minutes and see if it's something you wanted to add to your wish list or otherwise pass on. If after watching this you wanted to get the game for yourself, I got a link for you down below in the description. On top of that, you can also take a look down there if you wanted to find a link to my Discord or my Twitch stream to hang out live. But let's go ahead and start a new run. So for right now, this is a demo. It's publicly available. You can go play this right this second if you want to on the 8th, and I think it's the 10th now that I'm recording this, and so I don't even need to worry about that anymore. Very, very limited in scope and scale at the moment. All of the classes are not in the game right now. We can only play as the Raging Bloodlord, and there's only one domain, one god that we can seek out to slay. I don't need tutorials. I played the game a little bit for a couple of hours before recording this. But let's jump on in here and I'll show you what some of the gameplay looks like so you can figure out whether or not this game is sick. So at the beginning of the game, we got to kind of like go through the UI and talk about things here. Otherwise, nobody's going to have... I know everybody wants to jump straight into the action, but you're not going to know what's happening. Beginning of the game, we've got to pick an ability. So every single time you complete a round and you descend another depth inside the dungeon, you're going to get to pick abilities, and these abilities combine, these abilities interact with one another, they give buffs to one another. You're going to want to plan around that, otherwise by the time you get to round like 15 or so, you're going to start getting stomped hella hard. For right now, we have 3 abilities on the table: a Toxic Totem, a Razor Blade attack that just deals damage to an area, and then we've also got, it looks like, if we can get it up to spell power 120, you teleport around and then you cast it even stronger. All right. And then we've got an Ice Shade Missile over here, which is basically just a fan of ice knives that go out in front of our character. I'm going to go ahead and take that and put it inside my spell slot down here. You do have levels. There is a heavy RPG influence on this game. We'll talk about how that matters as we get further on in, but let's let this first round run while I talk about what the game is doing. So we've got our HP in the bottom left-hand corner inside the red orb, as you've seen a million times before in every game from Titan Quest to Diablo. On this side, we've got our Raging Berserk. When this gets up to the top, we spend it. We go into a rage mode that allows us to DPS and kill even faster. And then you've got this little blue orb down here. This little blue orb doesn't seem like it's doing much right now, but as we get further on into the game, what it's doing is it's generating 10 mana per second that's going into this ability being casted, and the game iteratively steps through all of your abilities from left to right, and this orb will move as it casts each spell and fills them up in order to make them go off. And there's different things that you can do to your spells to make them like bounce the orb backwards to accentuate and repeatedly use an ability that you've buffed up. You can make it so that the orb does various things, and that's where the game starts to get crunchy, and it starts to get kind of complicated and complex as you're thinking about these interactions. We have another batch of abilities that are ready to go on out. We have a Mythical Strike, which is an AoE greatsword that swings on the enemy. Spell power makes it deal more damage, and it makes the area of effect larger. We've got Drain over here, so gain 30 attack damage for 6 seconds. Additionally, basic attacks grant the spell you're currently casting 3 spell power till its next cast. That's not terrible. Or we could take another Ice Shade Missile. If you get 3 of anything, it combines and it upgrades into a level 2 spell. You can see that it says level 1 at the bottom of that spell card right there. There's also different tiers of abilities that can only come up, like different rarities of abilities that can only come up once you get further on into the game, and that's indicated by the little chevron that's on top of the card right here, along with the mana cost and how long it's going to take your mana orb to charge it. I'm going to take the Mythical Strike for right now, because the Mythical Strike in the past has been pretty good. On top of that, every single spell in the game also has tags. These tags, if you stack them up high enough, no doubt you've seen this in like the League of Legends and all those other auto-battlers. If you stack these up high enough, interesting interactions will happen. Everything from necromancy to crit increases to things of that nature. So you're trying to theory craft a build that's not only bouncing around and ping-ponging around down here in order to maximize your DPS, but you're also trying to find the bonuses that make all this stuff work the best. We do have Field of Decay right here. which might not be too bad. I may actually take that instead of Greatsword because it's tier 2, and it gets me started with Necro Weave, and I've been a big fan of how Necro Weave works. It allows me to resurrect enemies and create a super army of ghosts that do a lot of my damaging for me. Your character makes no attempt to avoid AoEs, so I don't know why they're indicated. They're just, like, indicated for some reason. I don't know if there's dodge abilities or something that other characters have. But while I've been playing this first Barbarian character, he has never made any attempt to stay out of AoEs. He just keeps DPSing. And so you sort of, like, accidentally dodge everything in this game. I would like to see the player character play a little bit more realistically, where they actively try to move out of AoEs, and the AoE spamming from enemies is a little bit slower. But that sort of is what it is. We've got another Ice Shade missile up here. We've got nothing. One thing I do like, though, is that if you already have abilities slotted that give you bonuses over here on this left-hand side, they glow and they flicker on the card. That's very, very nice, because what I find myself doing in a lot of games like these, and I'm not particularly a huge fan of auto-battlers. Other people are much bigger proponents of this genre than I am. I'm kind of shrug about it, but one thing I have noticed about these games when I do make a foray into them is that very often that is not indicated. So you're constantly like looking at the icons over here, comparing the icons over here, and it makes your in-between round time much longer. This is a very, very nice detail that I feel like a lot of other games miss out on. I'm going to take the Ice Shade missile so that we can level this up. We're going to refresh it real fast. We've got a Dusk Bullet, but nothing here is really adding to any strategy that we're trying to get done. We could get some bonus damage temporarily by throwing in this Dusk Bullet right here. It doesn't deal that much damage, and so this is probably going to be a temporary ability that we just take for right now. I've noticed that there are abilities that there's balancing to be done here with this game. I found some abilities that are really good compared to other abilities, and really, I've actually noticed that you can dilute your DPS by putting things in. You can lose DPS by having multiple spells in, when sometimes it's a good idea to just have 2 spells that interact with each other for certain waves and whatnot. And so that's probably going to be a temporary spell that I'm just going to hold on to for a little bit, but our character's moving on through the enemy territory right now, making things happen, taking down foes, and we've made it to the next shrine. At this shrine, because we just made it to fight number 5, I think, every 5 you're going to get a piece of equipment. This is another area where the game can show a lot of improvement. None of your equipment shows on your character. Because the game is invoking heavily from a Diablo influence, the gear needs to show on the characters before it'll get a recommend from me. That's one of the hugest things that's an appeal to me about Diablo-style games, is the constant cycling through different armor graphics and making yourself look cool as a sign of visual progression. It's one of those things that games leave out all the time, and I think it's really underrated how much that's sort of a necessity to players like me for me to engage with your game. But these relics right here do exactly what you would expect from a relic a la something like the Binding of Isaac or from a game like Slay the Spire. They have game-wide effects that make stuff happen. So we have a Guardian Mask over here. If we cast a tier 1 spell, we get 40 shields. So that behooves us to make sure all of our spells are tier 1 so that we're constantly giving ourselves kind of a mana shield that keeps the enemy's DPS up and off of us. On top of that, it also gives us another shop refresh. But our shop refresh the first time will only give us tier 1 spells, which actually kind of plays back into this. We have Ironclad Helmet, we get 500 health, and we get 100 health for every shop refresh we use in the planning phase. We can also save our shop refreshes and lock them in between rounds, so that's not too bad. We've got 5 health regeneration at the start of combat. We gain another permanent health regeneration, and when we level up, we get 3 shop refreshes. I like these two the best. I think this one sort of locks us into a certain playstyle that I'm not familiar with, though. This one right here is kind of universally good, so we'll go ahead and take that. And then we can choose to get XP, or we can choose to get refreshes. This is how the game changes as you go forward. XP in this game, every time you level up, you get another spell slot. So keep that in mind. At a certain point, those level ups will also make it so that we can hold more spells in reserve, so that we can stack up more combos and we can combine more things. Resonance over here, whenever we get to 100 resonance, that allows us to choose rewards, basically. And so we want our resonance to go up so that we can get more of these armor and equipment pieces. Since we're nowhere near a level up, I think I'll just go for refreshes for right now. And I don't really want the dagger Shadow Fang. It does move us towards that Necromancer strategy that I was talking about, so I'll take it for now, but I'm not going to be super excited about it. We'll get another one of these so that they combine in a little bit. We'll get another Dusk Bullet right there, And then we do have another Necro Weave spell. So enemy units, let's see here. What does this do? Field of Decay. Oh, we already have that one slotted in. On that last one, we had a Necro Weave. I'm kind of wondering if I should have put it in. All right, well, we'll keep that just so we can level that up right there because it is a little bit rarer than what we already picked up. And so send them on out. There are different biomes that you're going to be fighting your way through. I do find a lot of them to be overly saturated in a certain theme color, though. And there definitely seems to be a disproportionate amount of levels that are like this blinding red color where you can't really see spell effects or anything else inside of them. Room for improvement, as I mentioned earlier, is I think that the spells could be a lot more distinctive. They could have a lot more punch to their soundscape and to the way that they feel when the character is casting them. Little things like that could all be brushed up and made to be a little bit better, but for right now, our character seems to be hanging in there. We took a little bit of damage on that last run that has me a little bit concerned. Let's take the 3 refreshes because I'm hunting for another Necro Weave ability, and we have it right there. Launch 6 projectiles aimed at your current target, each dealing 100 damage. There we go. That'll work. So that'll swap out for him right there. We no longer need the Dusk Bullets. So the Dusk Bullets can go. We now have Necro Weave 3 and we have Deathblade 3. So we have a higher critical strike chance and damage. And we're also now resurrecting ghosts that are going to be all around us while we're fighting. So now we don't need to take refreshes quite so aggressively as we did before. We could push for an even higher level of Necro Weave, which will allow us to resurrect elites and like named enemies and stuff like that, which would probably be a pretty solid force multiplier in all honesty. So we could take Death Pulse and we could swap out Ice Shade Missile for it. However, in doing that, we will lose our Death Blade, which is giving us a lot of crit right now. So it really depends whether or not we want to double down super hard on getting the Necromancy bonuses. I say in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's go ahead and do it. We're at Necro Weave 4. We get our next bonus at 5. But we don't have the spell slots to put them on in. And similar spells do not donate more stacks. They need to be distinctive spells. From there, we've got a bunch of fire nonsense here that I don't think is really going to be that helpful. On this one, we've got spell power. And on this one, nothing that I'm crazy excited about either. So I may just run it as it stands right now and see how this goes for us. Off, and away we go. A little bit of a frame hitch right there, too. I've noticed that while I've been playing the game, is that it does suffer from a pretty serious frame hitch every now and again. But as you can see, we have a whole bunch of minions now that are donating to our DPS. We are shooting necromancy spells all over the place for all intents and purposes. We're kind of a death barbarian right now that specializes in the harvesting of souls and then basically enslaving them to our afterlife service. And it looks like our DPS has made a pretty solid boost on this run. I'm noticing a lot less damage taken during that time period as well. Last time we had lost 500 HP, and so I think we're at a good equilibrium right now. The game is going to let me choose between biomes. Unfortunately, we didn't get a new biome. We got desert twice. That probably should be programmed to not be able to happen, to get 2 of the same biome. Just to keep things more diverse and interesting, but just to give you a list since we struck out here, as I always do whenever I'm recording a game, the game will look the absolute worst that it possibly can just to spite me every single time I play a game on the internet. It's amazing how incredible RNG engines do this to me, where we just play the same map over and over and over again. But I've seen jungles, I've seen lava levels, I've seen forests, all that kind of stuff. They're all in here. We just didn't get them. Now, these places are going to have a permanent modifier that is added onto our game. Both of these are going to be pretty bad. I've found that these permanent modifiers are really heavy hitting, and you kind of want to pay attention to them. So this one right here is going to nerf our DPS very, very aggressively by keeping us out of our rage stance by 40% slower. This one over here is going to make it so that we don't heal after fights. And so, tough one. On top of that, there's also going to be minor modifiers. This one nerfs my AoEs, and it looks like beetles spawn all over the place whenever we get into fights. We also have 2 fights in this zone that give us voodoo doctors, godly enemies that heal nearby enemies, and then we have lower health regeneration. Man, tough one. I guess I'll go with this guy. On top of that, we will also be gifted a gem. You no doubt noticed that there's a socket on all of these abilities. What the socket does is that if we put this on in here, it'll do something. And this is where you start to get the mana ball manipulation, where it'll bounce around foosball style in different directions, and you're trying to basically pick a spell that is your bread and butter spell, like your spender, and you want it to keep bouncing back to that, and you want the things on the side of it to be like buffing it somehow every time they go off, and then the rest of the stuff over here, you kind of want it to donate to like the leftmost tile or the rightmost tile, and you're trying to find like an order to everything that's being casted that makes the game feel very crunchy and sort of satisfying when you figure out something that works. I will take XP right here so that I can fit a new spell, and we're only going to get 2 refreshes on this one. I don't particularly want any of these lightning abilities. I found lightning to be really underwhelming. I'm a big lightning fan when it comes to games like this. I always tend to gravitate towards lightning elemental stuff, and so I did the same thing with this game, trying to make a lightning build that like built off of itself and cascaded, and I just couldn't get it to work right. So we can deal less damage right here, but we do generate more mana when it goes off. We don't have any particularly expensive spells out here. This spell's probably going to have to be swapped because it seems like this wants us to be spell reflecting and it gets bonuses whenever we spell reflect. So I'm going to need some more slots, but I'm going to start thinking about picking up whatever that element is right there, ward. Well, there you go. I'm going to start thinking about picking up ward. This one right here gives us pretty solid buffs. All spells to the left get more area, all spells to the right get more projectiles. And then it randomly selects the left or the right, and then the 3 closest spells on that side get 20 spell power for their next cast. That's not bad. I don't think we're running too many things in here, though, that have spell power requirements in order to activate, like, a secondary attack. So I think we'll be okay. This guy right here, I'm going to hold on to it. We don't really have any expensive spells that cost a lot. And so everything is refilling instantly that we have here except for this guy, and I don't know if I want it to double cast. I guess we can run it on this go and see what happens. You can always take the gems out if you don't like the way that they perform. Yeah, so it put out a couple. Actually, the couple AoEs right there did all right. I don't despise it. Like, I don't hate what happened right there. Like, opening up with a strong AoE at the beginning when the enemy was clustered like that did give us some pretty ridiculous DPS. I'm glad that we stockpiled that spell that gives everything on the left larger area, because I think that's going to interact very strongly right here. Our spell power is getting buffed to the moon right now too, which is really great. We seem to be clearing at an okay rate, but we did take a lot of damage right there, which is the one part that I'm worried about. Okay, so this is where you hit it big or you strike out. This is called a permanent spell. And at a certain fight, it's going to permanently embed a spell inside of your spell list, and you're not going to be able to remove it. We struck out. We struck out hard. We didn't really get anything that benefits our build, nor did we get anything that benefits with our side traits. So I'm probably going to go ahead and re-roll all of these in the hopes that I'll just get something. What does Eclipse do? Combat start, your 3 rightmost spells gain various bonuses. So we don't really have anything too beautiful here. I mean, I think this guy is probably the one because it plays into this cheap spell strategy that we have going on. It gives us 2 stacks of Eclipse, which buffs our rightmost spells. And so I think it'll be okay as long as I put it right there. It's going to have to do. It looks like we get spell power, and it looks like we get higher critical chance. So I can take that. I think that sounds okay. And then we get a resonance reward right here. 8 health regeneration, 250 health, and 25 evasion score, or all of your projectile attacks get 15 spell power. We do have a lot of projectile attacks in here. Our current evasion score is at 100. Unfortunately, there's no tooltips to tell you exactly what that means. We've got 33% evasion chance, I guess. So with 25% more, I think we can extrapolate that that'll go up to like the 45 region. I'm going to take it. It looks like it gave us deflection instead. Did I read it wrong? I must have read it wrong. We're right next to a level up, so I'm going to take the level up real quick. We've got Bloodthirst over here, which gets our Deathblade back up and spinning again for higher critical strike chance. And nothing else here really does anything for us, and it's a tier 3 spell. We do have another Equilibrium right there, which I was saving that extra slot for. We have a third one of that, so that just leveled up, so it's dealing a lot more damage now because it's a level 2 tier 2, which is good for us. We just leveled up Equilibrium as well, which should get us into Ward 2, which gives us even higher deflection scores. So we've got a 70% chance to deflect, and every time we deflect, this ability goes off. If we can get a gem that also buffs that up, I think we'll be in really good shape. I think we'll be in a solid spot. We just kind of need to get there. We also have Barrage here, and if we take this up to level 3, we get 10% increased mana generation, so we get 11 per second instead of 10 per second. I don't know. I'm kind of adapting to circumstance right now. I'll take another one of these because I think this shield cast right here is actually going to be important for keeping us alive. And this selects on the left or the right side, so we want that to be dead center. Like, that needs to be in there. I would say swap this over to something cheap that auto-casts quickly. And we'll try that out to see how this goes. We could also put it right there so that it double buffs up my spells on the right before we go in, but we'll just keep our eye on the prize for right now. Let's watch this DPS meter and kind of see how this round goes versus the last round. Field of Decay still being our dominant DPS source right now. Like, it's really chewing people up and eating them. It's doing a pretty good job. So, kind of hard to say. We're sticking it at max health right now, which is great. I see lots of projectiles going off, which means we're more than likely getting those deflections. Pretty easy peasy go. I wasn't looking to see exactly where Field of Decay's DPS was sitting at before I made the swap between those two spots. But we'll keep an eye on it. Give me some refreshes right here. Definitely want that to keep that leveling up. Definitely want that. We've got another Death Blade over here that would increase our crit pretty considerably. But our spell reserve is getting kind of full right now. Get rid of those two. Those were kind of like early game pickups that I don't care about. Get rid of those two as well. We'll throw those out real fast. I don't want anything from that stack. We'll get that to level up that spell. Oof, we've got a chance to pick up another Necrotic level 2. Or I'll take it for when we level up. Sounds like a plan to me. But it is a thoughtful game. I think most of the problems here that I've noticed are just presentational. Like, the sound effects could use a lot of work, the impact of attacks, and sort of the visual triggering and indications of the game of what's happening and what's going on could go a little bit better. That speeds the game up. Can I slow the game down, though? Because I would actually prefer to play this at, like, 75% speed, too. The game does not pause when you go into the options, which is kind of interesting. So that's another thing that's going to have to change right there. You should definitely give the player the chance to pause the game if they need to. You never know when you're going to have to take a catastrophic poop, man. That's just how life works. You think you're sitting there, you're gaming, you're having a good time, and then all of a sudden your stomach goes like... And you never know, dude. That Taco Bell from last night might hold its little own, like, do you hear the people sing Revolution? And we've got items up right now, so we've got the Colossal Maul. Area spells gain bonus area equal to 100% of their mana cost. Okay, the gem here, it gives a spell and adjacent spells plus 10 cost, but also plus 60 spell power. That's pretty nasty. We've got the Dragon Hunter. Grant your leftmost and rightmost projectile spells refill 1, plus 1 projectile, and plus 20% mana generation. So what refill does is it makes it fill up twice before it cycles to the next ability. We get a Sharpshooter gem. Gain a gem for every 5 projectiles this spell launches. Gain 6 spell power, up to a bonus of 60. This guy right here fires 6 projectiles by himself, but I would have to take that bow, which I think is actually going to hurt me. And we've also got the Golden Cleaver. Whenever you cast a buff spell, gain 15% attack speed for 6 seconds. We have a gem. The spell gains 8% bonus damage for every buff spell you have equipped. This spell now counts as a buff spell. We do have 2 cards that are conceivably giving us buffs. So I think this might be our guy. And then maybe we'll just throw that in right there so that counts as a buff spell as well. I think that'll work. My brain is thinking real hard right now. I need to try to level up as soon as possible so that I get another slot so that I can put in Necrotic Bite so that we get to Necro Weave 5, because that'll allow us to summon back elites. And I think that'll take a lot of pressure off our character. I am mostly uninterested in everything there. I do need that to level that up, so that's a good pickup. And I think that should be it for us. I think we're ready to roll right now. Let's get spun up. Let's see how this goes. We're definitely attacking faster when buff spells are going off for 6 seconds. You can definitely see that. Death Pulse and Field of Decay jockeying for first. Minions taking over our #1 damage source, which is why I'm glad that I'm focusing on Necromancy. I think that's going to work out pretty well for us. HP is mostly evened out right now. We're not losing HP yet, and normally by this round, you're starting to see a little bit of HP decay. We're still getting through enemies with suitable DPS as well, so I think I'm happy with where we're sitting right now. Let's take that so we can get a level 2 version. I don't see anything on that flop that's looking particularly enticing, so send it. Get back into the fray, Top Knot. You got things to do. Sometimes it drags before it starts the next round, too, which can create like a little break in the flow of the game, and I'm not exactly sure why it does that. Like I said, little performance issues in there. Well, you'll see hitches every now and again, even though I'm on a 4090, and it seems like it takes a second for the level to start after you click the button every now and again. Not every time. Sometimes it's seamless, but it happens here and there. All in all, I think it's a pretty interesting take on auto-battlers. I think if they can get the production level stuff and the presentation level stuff taken care of, where the enemies like actually throw blood all over the ground and break into pieces and have better death animations, and the character shows his armor and the sound effects get an overhaul so that they sound punchier and more plosive and have a little bit more hit and punch to them, I think would be a really good idea to get this game moving. The game is also kind of like largely... yeah, like the sound effects the enemies make as well when they're dying and hissing and whatnot. Also very, very quiet by comparison to the rest of the game. But the soundtrack is a bopper. Now we've got 2 maps we can go to here. Melee enemies deal up to 25% more damage based on your missing health. Attack spells have lowered critical strike chance. Enemy hexes deal more damage to you if you have an active shield. I don't. A gem that I'm not hugely passionate about. Enemies have a 20% chance of spawning 1 tier higher. Whenever you gain a shield, increase the cost of a random... I don't really get shields, so that's fine. Enemy attacks deal more damage if you have a shield. And then we get a Titan Gem, 15 mana cost, refill 1, 20 spell power, 40% increased area of effect. Foofkins. I don't know what to do with that. I'm going to take that, but I don't know what to do with that gem. Refill 2. You gotta really have something with Refill 2 that you want to see get casted over and over and over again, and the plus 15 mana cost is kind of scary, because the only thing that I would really think about putting it on here is something dirt nasty cheap, and it has to go on an AoE, huh? Interesting. I'm gonna give it a try, but I don't know how efficient this is gonna be. I'm gonna put it on my AoE. But every time this goes off, we are getting a bonus from our other gem. Every time we cast a buff spell. Oh, it doesn't count as a buff spell anymore because I moved it over to there. Interesting. I don't know. Let's take our XP for a 5th slot so that I can put Necrotic Bite in there that'll allow us to res elites. That'll definitely be helpful. Cycle that. Cycle that. Take that. Take that for an easy level 2 spell. I could have combined right there too, but this is already at level 2, right? So I would need to get a lot more of these before that strategy is going to work. Okay, run it. Let's see how this thing goes. We should be lighting off some pretty big, juicy, tasty AoEs here as it cycles. that's probably going to be our principal DPS source. Yeah, I was going to say, it skyrocketed up to the top with all those buffs. And then it multicasts now, too, even though it has to refill a little bit. And so it's an interesting game. I do think that they're definitely targeting a certain audience that will be interested in this kind of game. I don't think it's the kind of game that I would play a whole bunch until some of the things that I've talked about get changed about it, just because I'm already predisposed to not really liking auto battlers. But if it got those things on in there, I think my love of Diablo and action RPG-style slaughterfests might carry. And so my name is Splattercat. I sift through the pile to find what's worthwhile in the world of indie games every single day so you don't have to. Today up on the chopping block, we have been checking out Godslayer Arena. Tomorrow we'll be checking out something else. Thank you for spending your time with me, and that's all I got. Bye, folks.